in conversation with some fascinating ladies who've changed the game in the world of video, music, and gaming. Only on Hungama Game Changers Leadership Series podcast.
Hi, welcome back to Hungama Game Changers 2025, a celebration of women who aren't just playing the game, they're changing it. I'm Raunaq from Hungama, and I'm so thrilled to bring you another conversation from the front lines of entertainment, tech, and creativity. Today's guest is someone who sits at the intersection of all three. She's a strategist, a builder, a connector, a narrator who understands the pulse of creators, the pace of platforms, and the future of how content works. Please welcome Ayesha Khan, a dynamic force in gaming, partnerships, and creator innovation.
You're going to make me blush.
Ayesha, welcome to Game Changers. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So let's start at the beginning. Your journey into gaming.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I had like most people about my age, I had a weird introduction into gaming because when I joined the industry, it was still a little bit new. It was transitioning from being that classic sort of 80s and 90s two guys in a basement making Pong or whatever it was, to much bigger companies, much bigger budgets, much more complex games. I ended up in gaming, which again, I didn't even think of as a possible career choice. I thought I was going to go into publishing. I have a degree in creative writing and another one in history, and I thought that I was going to go into editing or writing or publishing or something like that. So I'd done a couple of internships. I had investigated the traditional publishing space. I had just come back from a year in Pakistan, living with my family, doing some teaching. I taught O-level English, and that was enough to make me realize that I didn't want to be a teacher. I have so much respect for the profession.
That age group will do it for you.
That'll do it. I was 23, 24, 25, something like that, for that year. So barely older than my students. And it was, there were some things about it that were really rewarding, but it's such a tough life, and your time is never your own. And I am a little bit neurodivergent. I really appreciate being able to work at work and then leave work at work and come home, and that's my time, Yeah. So yeah, I came back from that. I was working some dead-end job, but I had been a gamer in one way or another for most of my childhood and my life. And then in university, my friend introduced me to LARPing, which is live action role playing, an extremely nerdy hobby in the US. And we basically imagine Dungeons and Dragons, but live. So you go out into the woods for, a whole weekend in these sort of drafty little cabins, and you put on costumes and you pretend to be a character, and you hit each other with foam swords and pretend magic and things. It's awfully wholesome. It's really fun. But
I just for this generation.
Yeah, right. But I met some really great nerds through that, basically people I got along with very well. We all liked the same sort of stuff. We all liked, and we were willing to be silly and not so serious and a little bit vulnerable and a little bit ridiculous in front of each other. And one of them, when he found out that I was looking for whatever my next job would be, said, "Didn't you take a Tolkien class in university?" I was like, yeah. I was lucky enough to have a great professor who got to teach what she wanted, as well as her intro classes, and she'd done a deep dive into J.R.R. Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and all of that. And my friend said, well, my company's making Lord of the Rings online, and we need, and these are his words, not mine, he's like, and we need a lore monkey to be in QA, to be a game tester, but, who really knows the source material. And I said, I've never done game testing, and I play single-player games. They're making an MMO, an MMORPG, so thousands and thousands of players at the same time and whatever. It was the heyday of World of Warcraft, and so they were trying to compete with that, And he said, well, I can't guarantee you the job or anything, but I can get you an interview. Come on in and see. And I came in, and after talking to people for 5 minutes, in the sort of couple of rounds of interviews I had, it was this light bulb moment for me of like, oh, my people, this is where you were. I had no idea. Somebody should have told me.
I have to say, if there's ever an introductory story, and you told me this before, but I had to get it here. Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. I mean, that's just like baptism by fire, right?
Just rampant nerditry. Yeah, for sure. But that was the point, was that I was a book nerd. I was this sort of, I wasn't a huge Tolkien fangirl, but I knew the stuff and I liked it enough, sort of thing. And so, but these were people who got my jokes, who sort of spoke my language. And I think that that's been kind of the theme throughout my my career. Spoiler alert, I did get the job. And then about 9 months later, a junior designer position opened up, and I took the test kind of cold, kind of blind. I'd never taken a design test before, but I was encouraged to apply, and I had pretty good instincts, and I got the job there. So that's how I became first a game designer. There was no such thing as a narrative designer back then, but they called them content designers to differentiate from systems designers, both flavors of game design for MMOs. And then I ended up being a game designer, game writer, narrative designer, and everything in between, and eventually a narrative lead in all of the rest of my jobs and my companies and my career. But I would say that the theme throughout has been a willingness to kind of, I hear about an opportunity or something and I go, yeah, why not? Let's try it. Let's see what we can do, because there are some things I've done that other people have told me are really scary. I moved to Germany and I didn't speak. I had like 2 years of school German 10 years ago. You know what I mean? But I thought, well, it was 2008. The economy had just happened, and I thought I'd give it a shot. So I think that's been for me the game changer, if you will. The secret to success has been a willingness to sort of take the plunge and say it might not succeed, but then again it might.
I think actually the generation that is coming into the workforce and having their first, second jobs right now, adaptability is going to be the most key thing in their lives, because we jumped jobs. Our parents did not even jump.
Our parents did not. 100%.
Job, and to some extent, maybe an industry. This, they're going to have to jump skill sets. And I think the willingness to learn is going to have to be something they're just going to have to make a part of their routine.
And it sounds scary, a willingness to learn. It's like, do I have to be a student for the rest of my life? No. It's a willingness to learn. It's a willingness to learn how to Google. You know what I mean? It's a willingness to learn how to get the basics, and then to not be perfect at it, to not be good at it, in fact, when you first start, but learn on the job. Learn enough to fake it, learn enough to get the basics done. Like, when I had a job that required a lot of Excel skills, and I was like, yeah, definitely can use Excel. Google. How do I do this? How do I do that? But, sooner or later, there are a few things that you use every day, and everything else is fine if you look it up. But that's kind of, as you say, I think that jumping skill sets is going to be a key thing.
I find that while gaming should not be gendered as a thing at all, because your physical strength does not factor in. I think this ability to say, yeah, I can. I think women tend to work much harder, make sure that they have checked every box completely before they take the plunge. And I think sometimes in gaming, that's what kind of skews the numbers.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, like, there's a few things, we all know that DEI is a necessity because people tend to hire themselves, whether they want to or not. At not this past job, but the one before that, I hired 2 women with colored hair, like purple and blue hair. So I'm not guilty either. To be fair though, I was going through a lot of resumes. They were the best candidates, and also I was trying to make the industry a little bit more diverse, because if we don't, who will? But also, if you have a whole bunch of white men, they'll hire each other, and they won't mean to. It might not be malicious, but a lot of times they will do that. So we need to aspire to the confidence of a mediocre white man who will absolutely apply to any job, whether or not he's qualified at all.
I can. Of course I can. My daughter studies math, and I'll never forget this. She and a bunch of her classmates were applying to this school. She was captain of robotics, and she had done little things and all of that. And I could see this deep unease when she was going through the process. when she was, because they were technical schools or math and science schools. And when she was getting in, her first response to me was, oh my God, look, I'm getting into colleges like this.
And you're like, look at your resume. Of course you are.
And in my head, I kept thinking, oh my God, I thought I had beaten at least this sense of imposter syndrome and I was just like, but why not? And, and I could see classmates who interestingly didn't get into some of those schools, unfortunately. But the confidence with which they had taken that was very different. And this was, it was just that, of course I'll get in and it's that level of confidence. I think sometimes I really wish people aspire for it. And sometimes it's, seeded in incompetence. But that confidence, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's not to be all like feminism 101, but like it is entitlement, it is privilege, it is the whole world telling them that of course they must get what they want, whether that is jobs or opportunities or women or children or the lifestyle that they want or whatever it is, that is something that if there's anything gendered in the world, it's that sense of belonging, entitlement, confidence, privilege, whatever you want to call it. I absolutely agree. And yes, tech and gaming shouldn't be gendered because, as you say, we're not lifting heavy things. We're not, there's no physical impediment. And we are, in general, just to generalize, but like women are socialized to handle a lot of things happening at the same time. We multitask well, we think on our feet well, and that's half of tech. That's gaming in a nutshell, is like we're always, almost always, unless you're making a perfect clone of a game, you're breaking new ground. You are solving new problems. You cannot look it up in a book and find out how some other app did it if you are making a new type of game design or a new, core mechanic or something. So you're always having to kind of be mobile and think on your feet a little bit or try to find new solutions.
The confidence to be able to give a bad idea.
Yes.
Because you're not able to, you're okay not having a sense of, anxiety about the fact that you'll be judged on that bad idea. Because you'll have 20 of those. Somebody else will feed off of that and come up with 5 others. A third person will find this thought, and it will emerge. What will emerge will be path-breaking and groundbreaking and all of those things. But it wouldn't have come were it not for that bad idea. So I really do, I agree with you. One of the things that I also find, since you touched upon this about hiring, you can't be what you can't see, and you typically end up hiring yourself. Tech partnerships and a lot of content collaborations are a connected space. What happens when you are not connected?
Yeah, the importance of networking, right? And networking is such a horrible, icky feeling word. Most of us, and I'm a reasonably confident, reasonably extroverted person, but I get the wibbles when I have to go to a networking event, this sort of thing. But that the old adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know is just as important in games and tech as it is anywhere else. And here's the thing, is that people think of networking as this almost predatory practice where you have to go out and you have to use people to get what you want, and they will use you to get what they want. And it's like, that's not what it is. What it is that what you should try to be doing is meeting people who are into the same kinds of things you are, preferably in some sort of social setting, and just getting to know them as people. And sooner or later, once you do, and once you learn who they are and what they like and how they communicate and everything like that, and they learn that about you, they're going to call you up and be like, oh, I heard about this opportunity. It seems right up your alley. You're going to call them up and be like, I saw that your company's hiring. I just worked with this guy. He's now laid off, but he's a hecking superstar. I literally had this conversation last night on a video call with an old colleague of mine. We were just catching up about she's doing up her wehouse and she's redone the patio and we're talking about garden plants. And I'm like, oh, wait, you say you're hiring up. Literally, I've got this guy who was an amazing team member. I would work with him again in a heartbeat. Let me just throw you his LinkedIn. And that is That's the connection. That's the thing. But 90% of that conversation was, how are you? How's your spouse? Tell me about your cats and your garden and your, like, did you go out to eat somewhere interesting recently? Like, it's a nice experience, and networking should be, in fact, a nice experience at heart. It is building a social network of people you like and you're interested in, and who do the same kinds of things as you, and who are interested in talking about the same kinds of things that you know about. That's really it.
So what are some of the industry events globally in your neck of the woods that you think are definitely worth showing up at? Because I do find that, unfortunately, women, especially as they kind of get out of that early stage, reduce the amount of networking they're doing in weirdly, because I think they're also trying to make sure they get everything done and then go home and then get everything done. So
and they've got 90% of the childcare, and they've got
and so I think it just becomes something that's taking them away from their home, a conference that's happening over a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's just not going to be a priority. So how would you prioritize, like, within gaming? What are the 3 things or 3 kinds of events worth attending at maybe, entry level, where you don't have the budgets to be able to attend GDC right off the bat?
Sure.
And what are the ones that, once you do have, or if you do have the opportunity to attend a conference like that, how do you make the most of it?
So conferences like that, agreed, they're restrictive and prohibitive just in terms of logistics and time and money. I would encourage people to look for things like sponsorships, and look for things like, I was part of a program called Amplifying New Voices in 2016 or whenever it was. And it was, helping, it paid for my GDC ticket, and it helped pay for like part of the travel. And I got my company to like pay for some of the rest of it if I promised to then hold essentially lectures on all of the stuff that I had seen there, like basically regurgitate my notes as a training sort of opportunity back at the company. In other words, don't approach all of this stuff with the ticket price is the ticket price and there's no haggling to be done. I shouldn't have to tell Desi women how to haggle. Like, we should be able to get a good deal, right? And so there's often, or there's a lot of programs where you can work at the conference for a day or two and attend the rest of it for free, for example. Which again, there's like ushers or something, volunteers at GDC do that. But with that set aside, I am invited to speak at universities quite often, and I don't always have time to do it, but I try to do it fairly regularly. And those kinds of lectures are not always, you don't always have to be in the class. Sometimes it's just a lecture at your local university, college, high school, whatever it is. So look for those kinds of talks, because then you will be meeting not just the people giving the lecture who have connections and all that sort of thing, but you'll be meeting your peers, your people who are about the same place.
Your next co-founder.
Yeah. Your next colleague in whatever way it is, your next contact, the next vendor you work with, whatever it is. So that I would encourage, like, look around for lectures. They're often free or cheap or whatever it is in your local place. And similarly, there are, look on wherever the kids are meeting up these days, whether that's Meetup or Eventbrite or, Insta and Facebook and TikTok, ? Do people organize stuff through that? But yeah, there's often, almost always, there's going to be some sort of local game dev meetup in some format. And you'll have to do a little bit of searching, but once you find it, again, it might be at a restaurant, it might be at a billiards club or a mini golf place or just sit by the water and have, bring your lunch, a picnic lunch or whatever it is. You will often find those. And I would strongly encourage people to go and look for the stuff that is in their very local area, as well as stuff that's free.
Hear about Buena Gardens.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing. There's a joke that at GDC people go on a parks and restaurants pass, which is when you can't afford even the expo pass or whatever it is. You just meet up with game devs outside in free spaces to like.
In fact, I think so many times I think that's actually where so much of the connecting happens. So if you're not in a space where I need to learn this and figure this out and attend a few sessions, sometimes that's actually most effective.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. The social connections, really, that's networking. That's, it's really hard to get to know somebody enough to want to recommend them to someone or recommend someone to them, which is kind of what the end product of networking is, right? But it's really hard to get to know someone enough when you're just sitting next to them in an audience at a lecture, or when you're just sort of, hello, yes, business card, okay, goodbye. Hello, yes, business card, okay, goodbye. You're like, that's not a way to really make connections.
I also feel sometimes when it comes to gaming, you really, this is a group of people that would much rather be at home playing a game than talking to another human being.
A lot of times there are. Designers tend to be a little more extroverted, but yes, the average artist, engineer.
The designers and the narrators, and you can tell the business teams.
Yeah. And then there's the suits and the money.
The rest of them, they would much rather be sort of, they'll have their IMs open and chat with the colleague that's sitting next to them as well. So, I do think that it's a little bit more of an effort for people who are like that, and for people around those people to kind of walk up. But I also find that if you walk up to somebody and have a conversation, 9 times out of 10, they'll have a lovely conversation back with you, and they're grateful for it.
Yes, yeah. And that's the thing, is that even when you're feeling kind of half sick from nerves or something like that, if you go up to somebody else who is alone, don't necessarily do the classic cringe movie scene thing of like going up to a laughing group and going ha 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 because you didn't hear the joke and you're just trying to. No, don't do that. Like, go up to somebody else who also looks a little bit weirded out and a little bit unhappy and be like, well, I hate parties, how are you? Something like, you don't have to make it about being on and being perfect and fitting in. You can connect with people on that level. It's like the old joke of how do you know that you're speaking to an extroverted engineer? It's because they're staring at your shoes instead of their own when you're talking to them, But that brings me actually to the third thing I was going to recommend. So, like, don't discount the big ones. Look for sponsorships. Also look for your local things and free things that are near you, and find your peers who are in the same area. But the third thing is, in fact, the online networking, as you mentioned it with people who would much rather, if you send them an IM, they'd be much happier. But Discord, for one thing, that's where, social media wise, most of the game dev industry has moved to Blue Sky off of Twitter, X, shitter, whatever, pardon my French. But but Discord is where the rest of us are, because of course we are. That's where gaming is as well. And there are a lot of Discords that, are for and with game devs, nerds of whatever stripe, game artists. I'm in 2 or 3 different Discords that are just for game narrative people. And one of them is sort of international, one of them's UK only. But if you're a little bit active on those, and then you show up at a conference or something, and I had 17 people, I'd never seen their face, but we arranged to have a dinner or, get a cup of tea or something like that. Finally, I get to meet you. What's your real name? But it was a great way to have connected with people and prep that, and sometimes you never meet them face to face, and they're still really good, really fun parts of your life and valuable contacts as well.
Also, sometimes somebody just to ask a quick question about an area that's a little bit out of your depth.
Yes, and people love feeling like they know what they're talking about. So find somebody who knows what they're talking about. Ask them, don't take the mickey, don't pester them with 25 questions in a row, but a couple of questions of as an expert, where should I start looking? I like answering those kinds of questions. Most people do.
So now, as somebody who's been in leadership on the narration and design side, how does one make an inroads into this space? And not everyone's going to start at a AAA company. We're working on one of those sort of gold standard games. But how do you kind of get your foot in the door, and then how do you make your way to working on one of those IPs that's going to live beyond you?
Oh, good question. So there's 2 flavors of leadership basically, and once you are middle in sort of the intermediate level of your career, you should start thinking about which direction you want to go. And one of those is the one that ends up in creative director or design director or engineering director or whatever it is, and VP of tech, or that sort of the person guiding the the direction and the vision for the game. And then the other direction is often much more management, much more people management. And that's people who go into I call it the lead versus specialist or subject expert directions. If you become a craftsperson, a subject expert in whatever your field is, then eventually you will often become the sort of vision driver, the creative director, the design director, the whatever it is. If you go into the other direction, you end up, being line manager. You end up sort of shepherding through people through their careers, figuring out how to make them into better designers or artists or whatever it is. And a lot of times people fall into that, not by accident, but by necessity. Their company says, well, somebody needs to manage this bunch of narratives. You seem like a grown-up, off you go. And you go, what, me? I don't manage people. I've never managed people. What's going on here? And tech in general, but game dev in particular, is really guilty of this a lot of times. And just because you have the seniority doesn't mean necessarily that you will enjoy that. But some people really do. I fell into it, again, because I was kind of interested in it, and I thought it would be a way to get more sort of responsibilities, but I thought it was something I was going to have to put up with while I then tried to become a narrative director eventually, sort of thing. And it turned out I really liked it, which was unexpected. It turned out that I love being able to give feedback and see it applied and see people's writing to get better because of it. I love figuring out what people need, what their gaps in their skill sets. It sounds dreadfully sort of businessy in HR, but sooner or later, it's a thing that reminds me a little bit of teaching, in that your success is determined by other people's success, not by your own actions as much. Do you know what I mean? It's about how well you work within a team. It's a really interesting puzzle to me. But some people go into that and they hate it. They're like, I just want to be left alone to do engineering or to do my art. And I'm very good at what I do, and therefore they've made me a lead, and I don't like that. So it is important to then be able to communicate to your higher ups and your boss which direction you want to go, where you want to specialize, what you want to sort of train in. And that's whether you're in an indie or a AAA or whatever it is, So they are sort of different skill sets, and I would encourage people to figure out kind of what excites them and what interests them and what direction they sort of want to go with that. So that's the long answer is that you should direct it a little bit yourself. The short answer is often it happens to you, and that can be successful and it can be awful depending on what kind of personality you are. So that's why you should be trying to direct it yourself. You want to be a little bit more intentional, I think, about your career. When it comes to how you get into these big IPs or this sort of thing, a lot of that is being able to not just have the work in your resume, in your CV, not just be able to say, I made these 3 indie games and they were good, but to be able to show, again, as teachers would say, show your thinking, not just show your work, but show your thinking. If your portfolio has, this is the thing I worked on, here's a YouTube video of it, or here's where it is. I'm like, okay, I look at that. I'm like, I know nothing about how you contributed, what you liked and didn't about it, what went into your thinking about it. If your portfolio says, this is the project I worked on. One of the challenges we faced was having to convert this from a subscription to a free-to-play model, and I had to learn how to game economy, which was fun and weird, and I made these mistakes and I learned that from them. I made this other decision, and it worked really well, and this is how it worked. And again, it's not a huge amount more text. You know what I mean? It's not like you don't have to write me a full essay. You want to whet my appetite enough that I want to then have an interview with you and understand some more about that. Ask you some questions. You've given me some things to sink my teeth into and some starting places, and that's really important. So when I'm hiring for AAA, and I have hired for AAA in the past, I'm not just looking at portfolios. I'm looking at, can this person take feedback? Can they integrate into a team? Are they going to be okay with not having creative power for the first chunk of their career? Because you don't. AAA is a big machine with a lot of moving parts, and it's all specialists. So you have to be very good at your thing, but you have to make your thing work well with 85 other things. And you have to not therefore be cranky when your feature gets cut or when your thing has to change, because it will. Of course it will. You're going to have to iterate like crazy, and you're going to be, again, it's quite, so that those are the sorts of things I'm looking for in people's portfolios and interviews, is like, are they going to be willing to learn, willing to adapt, and can they think about how they think? Can they think about what they've already learned and what they've already done?
Okay. Tammy, I think, and this is stressing a lot of people across ages, AI is changing everything, right? It's being really disruptive. It's inevitable, so it's not like we're putting genie back in the bottle. It is what it is. How do you approach your career, leadership, and strategy in such a fast-moving domain?
One of the things that is important is to understand that, no, you can't put genies back in the bottle, but not all the genies are as big as they look at first. Tech goes through trends. And a few years ago, everything was blockchain and everything was NFTs. And, entire studios were being built on, this is going to be an NFT-based game. And like, are you using NFTs in your daily life? Do you see them around? AI, it's a misleading term. It's machine learning. It's not intelligent. I worry that people think it's smarter than it is, because the hype and the marketing around it makes it sound like it's going to solve all of these problems. But it's very good at one or two things, and everything else, people are just trying to force a new way of working to make AI somehow work. So part of it is that I do honestly believe that the AI thing, sooner or later, we're going to make it good at doing the things it's good at. But that's, that'll be part of the process, in the same way that cloud storage became part of the process, I also think personally, and I might be wrong about it, I do think it's a bit overhyped. I think it's a bit more of a trend, and that in a few years we will use AI for some things and everything else will calm down a little bit and will not. But there'll be the next thing. There'll be the next big NFT, blockchain, AI, whatever it is, that everybody will be like, oh my God, it's an industry ender, it's a game changer, it's a whatever it is. So, part of it is being able to sort of look at historically what has changed the game, what has made a big impact on the industry, and how people reacted to it back then. And a lot of times it was the quiet little things that people were like, oh, I guess everything's on the cloud now, I guess, or whatever it was. So part of it is trying to keep a sense of perspective. Part of it is keeping educated and making sure that you do understand what AI is in this case, or what the newest thing is, and therefore where you think it's going to intersect with your own work. So for me, for example, I get offered jobs in, I don't get offered jobs every 5 minutes, but I get approached by recruiters who are like, oh, our company's doubling down on AI in whatever way. And I say, fine, I don't want my writing to be used to train the AI. That's my line. That's my personal thing. I don't think that we should be, I want AI to wrangle my calendar and fill in my paperwork so I have more time to write. I don't want it to be the other way around. That's really it. I don't see why I'm training AI to write. I like writing. That's the fun part. Why are you giving the fun part to robots? I think that AI, just like many other sort of NFT, blockchain, whatever it is, a lot of times they are the product of people who value different things than most game devs do, who do not necessarily always value things like art and creativity. They can't do them themselves, and therefore they don't understand them, and the problem they're trying to solve is the payroll of the people who do them, So I think that, again, educating yourself, being aware of what is happening and kind of trying to figure out why it's happening, that's going to future-proof you better than most other things. And then sometimes realizing that the industry is going to go up and down, and that, we are in a very weird and volatile industry. And what brings us all together, if we wanted real paychecks, we'd be in tech, in general tech.
Or in the larger tech industry.
Yeah, exactly. For narrative people, we'd be in marketing. That's where narrative designers go to die, is advertising. But what brings us together is that we're not just designing a digital suspension bridge from scratch. We're also having to plan and produce and throw an opera on top of the bridge. There's a lot of all of the craziness of art goes into it just as much as the challenges of engineering, and they need to both work. Otherwise, the bridge falls down and all the opera, singers are in the bay. You need to. I kind of lost the plot there. I'll be honest with you.
I actually wanted to move to something that I think.
Sure.
At Game Changers, we're deeply focused on who gets seen and who gets supported. From your vantage point, and you've sort of, been there and had tenure, what does inclusion look like in gaming and digital entertainment today?
Different perspectives in the room. That's really what it boils down to. Different ways of thinking that come from different lived experiences. You can't have a perfect rainbow United Colors of Benetton in every single meeting room, right? Because in a way it wouldn't be representative of that culture or area or game genre or whatever it is. But you shouldn't have everybody who comes from kind of the same background, kind of the same place, whether that's all white women or all brown men or all any other conversation. It's about having people from different social economic backgrounds as well. It's race and gender and sexuality and absolutely everything else. When I've seen it work well, it's been such a joy. It's been an invigorating, exciting environment to be in. And when I've seen it not be there, I worked in some companies in Germany that were very kind of all one kind of person worked there. All the same, again, sort of social economic background as well as everything else. And those felt stagnant. They felt like they moved slower. They felt like everybody was quite satisfied with the way things were, and therefore it was really hard to make improvements. It's not just change for the sake of change, of course. It's about improving processes. But if you can see that a process needs to be improved or something like that, and you can see it maybe because you've worked at other places or lived in other places or are from other backgrounds, and you're just sort of coming at the problem slightly from a different angle, then when companies don't have DEI, just communicating what the problem is and why it should be solved, let alone what the solution is, let alone implementing the solution, that just basic starting communication is so much more of an uphill battle. I think the real advantage I find to diverse workplaces is that people are more willing to trust each other's expertise and experience. To be like, well, I don't really see the problem here, but like 3 other people can see that this is going to become an issue. I didn't even think about that section of the audience. Yeah, fire on. Let's A/B test it and see how it looks. See how it goes. And that process is much faster, and therefore you fail faster and fail more often, which is better. It lets you succeed much more often and come up with more interesting things. But it makes you just also make those little tweaks and those little improvements as a baseline sort of daily life kind of thing. It makes the culture that allows for that much more likely.
Needed. So one of the things that I'm also, unfortunately, and you're seeing this as well, there's a resistance to diversity. And the resistance to diversity includes various different things. I know that there are groups of gamers that are resisting companies that are exploring diverse agendas. First of all, I don't even understand why. That being said, how can we onboard more people to this and to not think of this as an invasion of their space just by including others?
So I have, as for the why, there was a movie that opened my eyes to it when I was younger, and I would recommend that literally everybody watch it. It's called Pleasantville. You may know it. It's from the 90s, I want to say. And it was about different people coming into a very closed system. And the thing that it made me really sort of illustrated, because I was raised by a second wave feminist. I had no sympathy at all for the people who were crying and whining about things being different and girls getting to do stuff now and whatever it was. But it made me really see, there was one character, the father character, who was not a bad man, but he was entirely privileged. He was entirely entrenched in the system that was entirely made to support him. And it made me see how the loss of privilege can feel like an attack. You know, that equality, that you know, either the loss of privilege or everybody else gaining the same kind of privilege can feel like a personal attack to the people who had it. And that's the thing we have to get past. That's the thing, as you say, we have to sort of show them that. And so there, it unfortunately, it depends on the person or the group that you're dealing with. For some people, logic and money are a really good argument. More diverse games have larger audiences who spend more money on your stuff. There are plenty of studies, there are things like that. Like in general, there is a vocal minority. Of course there's a vocal minority, and they're very vocal. Boy, are they loud. But overall, you look at the sales numbers, and so, for example, the company I was just working at, Ubisoft, came out with a game recently that made a lot of headlines because it had a female and a black male lead characters for a game set in Shogun era Japan. Like, and to be clear, I haven't played the game. I don't know a whole lot about it. I was not involved in making it, but boy, was there a lot of crankiness. The black man, by the way, is a historical figure. He was actually there. There's plenty of documents. He existed. He was not an invention, you know. But there was this perception on the internet that the game had flopped. Oh God, everybody hates it. Everybody. And then you look at the actual numbers. It's like, did it though? It did fine. Like, actually, it's the numbers are there. So part of it is about being able to not pay attention to those loud voices, because you can't win with them. There is no winning them over. The only way to win them over is to be 1972 again. Like, there's no, that's a genie that is firmly out of the bottle for them, right? And if you try to pander to them, you'll lose everyone else, and they're still not going to be happy. It's still never going to be good enough for them. So part of that is like, those are some of the arguments I would present, I think, is like, the numbers are not on your side, my guy, or are not on their side. And also try not to say that it's a you thing. Just be like, oh, I understand why you would think that this is the main attitude or whatever it is, but it's actually a very small, it's a small minority. So that's for some people. For some people, it's more emotional appeals. A lot of that is kind of about getting some public speaking training and understanding how to appeal to different audiences, is a lot of it. But a lot of it is just that you've gotta put your head down and just keep being, frankly, better than the rest of them.
Yeah, you just have to build a better game.
And if you build it, they will come, kind of thing. It is frustrating. It's a slow, frustrating slog. I will say though that because gaming is so online and again there's such vocal minorities, it's easy to think that it's so much worse sexism wise than everything else. And it's not great. To be clear, it's not a very equal industry. There's not a lot of women in it, etc. But I have yet to find out about an industry that is free of the patriarchy. I've yet to find a place where there is no sexism, because if there was, maybe I would cross-train in that, but like, it's a global slog. We're in it and we're winning, but it's slow and it's annoying.
I mean, one of the things that I find in gaming, sometimes it's because leaders are handling it poorly. Sometimes it's just because everything changes so fast that deadlines have to be harder. Sometimes it's just because it's toxic workplaces. But I see creative people blow up and burn out. And, people who are juggling many hats in their lives, how can they be a part of this and not head straight into burnout?
I've seen that a lot, and I'm very pleased to be able to report from the front lines that the industry's gotten a lot better since I started.
It has
a real change. I mean, I slept under my desk in the early days. Some days, like I worked 16-hour days, and I shouldn't have, and nobody should have expected it of me, and nobody should have let me do it, let alone expect it, but I did. And I'm trying to make sure that that doesn't happen in the places that I work from now on. I love that we are focusing as an industry much more on work-life balance, on avoidance of crunch, all this sort of thing. But the biggest thing that you can do to protect yourself, and this is a lesson I wish I'd learned 15 years ago. I think I'm only just starting to learn it properly. But the biggest thing you can do is to build a sense of your own identity and your own worth that is separate from your work. That is, the games industry is populated by people who love games, and we love to make games, and we love the buzz that, we can make games together, and that those creative juices flow, and it's a really exciting thing when it happens right. It's so great, and it's so fun, and it's so easy then to stay a little later, to work through lunch, to sort of skip the self-care stuff that you kind of know you should be doing because it's exciting, and or people are like, oh, we're all pulling together, it's a team where you should all, and there'll be pizza at midnight, none of that is sustainable, and especially it's an industry that used to depend much more on burning out younger people because there were always more younger people to replace you. So first of all, don't get on that treadmill, there's no winning. But even if you do survive those first few years in sort of more predatory companies, it is because there's so much change. If your whole identity is built around what you do, and all of your friends are through work, and all of your social stuff is through work, and all of your everything is bound up with work, then it's really hard to push back when work is not treating you right. It's really hard to unionize and protect yourself and do all of the other things that we should be doing. It's really hard to look for better opportunities out there. And if you get laid off or fired or whatever it is probably laid off, but through no fault of your own, just because of the economy or whatever, that's happened to me a few times. It's really hard not to then spiral and not to get depressed and not to feel like, why am I in this industry? So yeah, the thing I would advise is try to do what I said I like to do, which is go to work, do a great job, and then leave work at work, and leave at the right time, leave at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever your core hours are, and go home and make yourself a real meal, eat something you like, read something you like, watch something you like, play something you like, that is not about work, that is not about homework, that is not about, do your hobbies, meet people who also do your hobbies, go to your rock climbing gym, go to your Stitch and Bitch knitting club, whatever it is, and that is how you avoid burnout, because that stuff replenishes your energy, first of all. And again, it doesn't have to be people hobbies. If you're an introvert, again, do the things that you like and that fill up your battery, but make them not about work. Because if all of your stuff is about work, then you're going to start dreaming about it, and you're going to start thinking you should do more or you could do more at all times, and that's where you burn out.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's a really good answer, actually.
Oh, good. I'm winning at podcast, which is a normal thing to want.
Tell me, what's a failure you're secretly proud of?
Ooh, a failure I'm secretly proud of? That's a good question. In a weird way, I think. So again, 2 jobs ago, I was working at a studio that was making something good and I was really excited about. I had hired team members I was really proud of hiring. I was working with a team I was really proud to work with. And I could not seem to communicate to the studio leaders and their corporate masters, to my boss, to other people, how bad some of the things we had to deal with were. There was a tool that we had to work with that was literally one of the reasons I left the company. It was if I have to work with this tool anymore, I'm going to shoot somebody. Let's not. There were some people at the company whose working practices were really, stressful and not maybe efficient or particularly helpful in some ways, etc. And I felt like I was sort of ringing that bell and shouting through that microphone and just trying to communicate over and over how bad things were. And sooner or later, I realized that I was failing to do so, or they were failing to hear me, or whatever it was. And I do think part of it was how I was communicating. I've learned some stuff since then, and I think I'm a better communicator. I'm better at managing upwards than I used to be. This was one of my first real leadership positions also. So, I was learning a lot of stuff on the in the trenches. But it was a tough decision to say, I have to walk away from this. I have to walk away from this team I like and this project I like and all of these things that I'm really proud of, because I have not managed to make this work in a way that's sustainable for my own well-being and my own mental health and my own career for that matter. And so, yeah, I'm secretly proud of it because I was protecting myself and making the decision that it was better to take a chance on something that, to be clear, didn't really work out. Like, the thing I went to was not the best decision either, but it was still the right thing to do at the time, because I think I would have burned myself out quite badly if I'd stayed there. And so, yeah, it was an overall kind of failure in terms of I didn't get done what I was rather hoping.
You prioritized yourself.
And that's not something I was that used to doing. So I am kind of proud of it, because I did prioritize myself, even though overall, was it the best thing for my career? Probably not. But I'm in a happier place now than I think I would have been higher up the corporate ladder at that same place. Do you know?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I get it.
Yeah.
Tell me, before we start winding up, because I do have my eye on the...
Oh, sure.
What I did want to ask you is, every person we speak to and every woman that we celebrate in the podcast, we invite them to nominate 2 women that they think are changing the game in their own way. So you can suggest people, you can suggest them now, or you can even send me an email with names, just 2 women that you think are game changers.
I can tell you one of them now, because again, it's literally the woman I spoke to last night. And not just because she's on my mind. There are 2 or 3 people in my career who have gotten the label superstar applied to them in my head, and then sometimes from other people. Oh yes, Lydia, she's a superstar. So that's one of them. She's a woman who I worked with and who is now an acting or associate lead, but also there is no other lead of the narrative team, so she's the lead. Her name is Lydia Cockram. I can stick that in the chat. She's based in London and Nottingham, and works at Dan Buster Studios. And I love the way she approaches her job in the world. It's just this, even when she's frustrated, even when things aren't going well, it's this unfailingly chill, calm, helpful, professional, friendly demeanor that is the perfect showcase for her skills, because she has the skills. She's an excellent writer, she's a good public speaker, she's a good leader, etc. And but so much of it is how she approaches work. She's a very stabilizing presence in a team and that sort of thing. But in a friendly, funny, smart way. So yeah, I would say her.
That's definitely hitting a lot of the checkpoints for the superstar tag.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to have a think about the second person. It's telling that she is the first person who came to mind, I guess. But yeah, here.
Anyway, I just wanted to thank you for being so generous, candid, insightful. You're helping shape not just, I think, the gaming space, but how we think about creators, how we think about content, and I think how we think about telling stories. So everyone listening to this is Hungama Game Changers 2025, a celebration of women who are transforming the face of entertainment. I'm Raunaq from Hungama, and Ayesha Khan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a real pleasant chat, and I don't know if I'm transforming anything, but I'm just muddling along and doing my best. I think that's all anyone can ask.
Thank you so much for your time regardless. Really, it's been lovely getting to know you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is Hungama Game Changers 2025, and I'm Raunaq from Hungama. Thank you for tuning in to our celebration of women who are not just playing the game, they're changing it.
In conversation with some fascinating ladies who've changed the game in the world of video, music, and gaming. Only on Hungama Game Changers Leadership Series podcast.